Hey everyone, welcome to the Doctors Running podcast, where we, a group of doctors of physical therapy, talk about the art and the science of the things that we put on our feet. Today, I am very happy to have DJ we're going to do a combined review of a couple shoes, talk about a couple concepts. I guess we usually do this, right? It's usually me and you, or Andrew and I are like, so this should be good, because I feel like we often disagree on things, so this makes the episode really, really fun, because we actually get some contrast as opposed to just saying yes, yes, yes. Although I'm a little concerned because I think you were right. I'm going to admit you were right now about something we're going to review, but maybe our opinions have changed a little bit. So this should be a good episode. We're going to talk about maximally cushioned shoes, especially cushioned trainers. But first, before we talk about that, we're going to talk about our DOR giving. So this is really important, both for myself as well as this team, that and as people know, we are very fortunate that Doctors Running is starting to make an income. And as part of our mission, we really, really want to give back. And so each month, we pick a charity that we are going to donate a portion of our earnings to. And so this month, it came back to me, and I'm very, very excited to be able to choose the Students Run Los Angeles group. So Students Run LA is a really awesome charity and nonprofit organization that helps students and individuals from underserved communities get out there and start running. Usually the goal is to prepare them for the LA Marathon, but they have expanded beyond that, and they're doing lots of local races and runs. And it's all about, from their website, they said the mission of the Students Run LA is to challenge underserved secondary students to experience benefits of goal setting, character development, adult mentoring, and improved health by providing them with a truly life-changing experience, the training and completion of the LA Marathon. Like I said, that's not just what they do. There's a lot of other things that they do. And I'm really going to encourage you to go to their website. It's studentsrunla.org, and check out all they do, especially in the LA area. Just because getting people running, getting people moving is so important, not just from a health standpoint, but we have seen all this stuff about psychological health. And so I really applaud them for what they're doing and getting people involved, and not just students. So please check them out. We're very happy and honored to be able to donate to them, and that donation will be coming through very shortly. So going back to what we're going to be looking at, today we're going to be talking about max cushion trainers. So obviously our subjective is going to be, right, what is your favorite max cushion shoe? Not super shoe, right, because a lot of the super shoes and the racing shoes are max cushion, but something like, a Bondi. What have you really, really enjoyed? So I'm going to ask David first, what is your favorite max cushion shoe right now?
Yeah, I've got a couple in mind. Right before the episode, we were talking a tiny bit about it, and I was like, there's probably a good 3 or 4 I could toss up, but there's a couple off the top of my head that I have 2 distinct categories for, even within the maximalist category. One is the On Cloud Monster, like you're holding up. It's just a very versatile maximal cushion shoe that I can log daily miles in. I can turn over in. I can do a little bit of trail if I really need to, but it's still like, I don't know, kind of like that firm but still maximalist cushion type shoe that works really well for my mechanics. The other one would be the Craft CTM Ultra 2.
Ooh, that's
so
a great
non-carbon
choice.
Version. I actually like it without the plate. It's a little bit lighter on foot. I feel a little bit more nimble. And then you have just enough outsole to where you can still feel comfortable on road and on trail. And a lot of the running I do is in like horse trails or like some runnable trail conditions. I don't go too much into the mountains here as much, but it does just fine for what I need it for. So I've been pretty happy with it. 40 millimeters of stack in this one. I never got the exact number on the Cloud Monster, but both thick boys that perform well.
Yeah. The craft shoes that we got, I really liked the Ultra Carbon. I gotta say, those were legit. Those were great road and definitely trail shoes. I really, really enjoyed them. I am also interested in I was not surprised by your pick with the Cloud Monster, just because I have to say this is the first cloud shoe that actually felt cushioned, which is, again, they're not going about the clouds, right? But I think they did a good job, and I agree with you. I don't think you're better at making this shoe turn over than I am, and I am terrified that you would use. I mean, you use everything on trails. I don't think I would use this on trails personally, but David can take anything on trails, and he will survive.
Oh man, there was a
maybe
shoe
not so much.
Today I took. Oh my goodness. Well, we'll be talking about it later.
Yeah, we'll be talking about it.
But it did okay. It did okay enough. My ankles are alive, but
yeah. I think there's been a lot of them that I've really, really enjoyed. Hopefully I'm not violating. People have talked about this shoe. The Shift has kind of been my go-to favorite maximalist shoe for many, many years, and now I've got the Shift 3 that I just completed my miles on. I'll be getting a review out. I am really enjoying this shoe. It got a little bit more snug, but it's slightly softer, and I can turn over really well in this shoe. They lost a lot of weight, but the Saucony Endorphin Shift 3 is probably my top one and favorite. A lot of the ones we're going to talk about are really close and doing a really, really great job. So, yeah, any other thoughts on favorites or stuff coming up? Well, you usually say you've got something you can't talk about, right? But
Oh, you know
kidding.
what? I think
Yeah.
for once, I don't think I have anything
don't?
I can't talk about
Uh-oh.
in this category. Yeah.
All right.
However, I will give a shout out to the Asics Glide Ride 3. That's a shoe that has a very fun, snappy feel to it.
Yeah.
I would throw it in the maximalist category, and if,
It-
that's a good long run shoe for me.
It definitely is. That makes sense. So let's talk about. So, David, how do you define a maximalist training shoe? I know it sounds kind of like straightforward, but what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, when we take a look at what was used to be a traditional running shoe, I feel like they didn't really go north of 30 that often.
Yeah.
As far as heel stack height in the heel being in millimeters, so more than 3 centimeters of stack in the heel. However, in more recent times, we've seen pretty much every company under the moon go north of that. If it's under 30, they start calling it a low profile shoe, which is just crazy. But
Yeah.
It is what it is, and that's just how the industry has moved. I would probably say, for me, maximalist definition would probably be anything north of 35 when you start encroaching on that IAAF standard a little bit. I mean, that's for racing shoes on road racing, but I feel like when you're north of 35 millimeters of stack in the heel, you start to get a little bit saucy in the heel. So I would probably define it as 35 millimeters in the heel, regardless of whatever the drop ratio is, just having it high enough to where, like, okay, that's pretty high.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you. Starting to get that heel stack. When you get 35 in the forefoot, that's where things get a little bit nuts. But we're going to talk about a shoe that actually does that, and that's actually becoming more common, at least among racing shoes, among trainers. That hasn't been well. That's not.
No, there's been a couple.
True. There's been a couple, and they're increasing. The first one we're going to talk about is one of the OGs of like super maximalist shoes. So we actually have the Bondi 8 on our feet, which is, again, correct me if I'm wrong, I would call that one of the OGs of maximalist shoes. Hoka being one of the companies that kind of really got this going about making these huge, like, high stack height shoes. And the new Bondi, I'm actually really enjoying. I thought I was going to hate this, but I actually am really, really enjoying it. So do you have the specs for this? Of what we do know? All right, let me go. So I've got those. So the newest one is, so the old versions used to be pretty heavy. We're usually north of 11 ounces. This one's coming in at 10.8 ounces in a men's size 9. My size 10 is coming in at 12 ounces. David, do you have a size 9.5?
My scale is right behind me. Let's do a live weigh-in.
We'll do a live weigh and we'll see what happens.
I do feel like I weighed it before a sub 2 that we did. I want to say it was just a tiny bit north of 11.
Yeah.
But let me take a look. We're doing a live weigh-in. We have the Hoka Bondi 8, men's 9.5, gray colorway.
Yeah.
Tiny bit of wear. I've got about 20 miles or so on these, so I don't know if that'll affect it. There's a little bit of dirt as well, so maybe the dirt will add some grams or whatever. But we're looking at 11.3 ounces in my 9.5 for my right shoe.
There we go. So, still lighter than the older version. So, it's not meant to be a lightweight trainer. It's not meant to be a racing shoe. It's probably one of Hoka's best-selling shoes, both for running as well as for walking. So, this is a classic shoe you'll see not just on runners, but I see this shoe everywhere now in all its different versions.
It's a big walking shoe now.
Big walking shoe. I have a lot of patients that use this shoe that really, really enjoy it. It can be really, really nice for people with foot and ankle mobility issues, just because obviously with this much stack, it's got to be really rocker to help roll you forward because there's not a lot of flexibility. No plate like the Bondi X, but just you can't have that much flexibility with this much stack height. Although they put some more grooves in here, so that was interesting to have that.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is one of the OG Super Max cushion shoes. It does feel softer than some of the other versions. I haven't run a full amount in the other ones, but just initial step and feel. It's felt softer underfoot. They have said there's a new foam here. It still feels like EVA to me, but it definitely is starting to give a little bit more. David was what called me out on this. He was like, because I didn't like this shoe initially, and I was like, this is gonna suck, whatever. And then as it broke in, I actually did a workout. I did a fartlek in this shoe, and it performed okay. I was actually impressed. I would not advise that. This is not a fast shoe, but that much foam actually compressed really nice under the foot. So any day I can run faster than my wife is good, and she got mad, but that's how things go. We're both really competitive with each other, but we support each other. Stack height. So Hoka hasn't posted this yet, but I've had to do a little bit of digging. Somebody please correct me if I'm wrong on this, but the stuff that I'm seeing is said 39 millimeters in the heel, 35 in the forefoot for a foot. We know there's a 4 millimeter drop. I would say that's probably even higher. I wouldn't be surprised if it actually topped out at 40 millimeters, 36 millimeters. It's somewhere in there. It's somewhere in being like super max cushion. The midsole does look taller than it really is, just because the foot does sit down with the classic sidewalls, and I do really like that because it creates, you know, kind of a more like guided ride without being a stability shoe, but it's definitely stable, and it's been nice. I thought it was going to be really heavy and clunky. The fit. Let's talk about fit. So let's go back. So what are your initial impressions of this shoe?
Yeah, I mean, I will say the responsiveness of the shoe for a shoe that's this heavy, I found myself running a little bit faster than I thought I was running. With that said, I don't think it's something that I want to push the pace in per se, but like easy rhythmic running, I think the rocker on it's done pretty well. The transition through the midfoot can be a little bit of a lag time, and I think some of that's also just break-in because the foam itself, with the Bondi specifically over time, it's always been kind of like a firmer foam, but a lot of it, so it still ends up being plenty of cushioning underfoot.
Right.
I remember in the early days, I think the first Bondi I ran in was in Bondi 3, I believe. And I remember not having my proprioception, not knowing where my feet were. And I remember like very distinctly being like, oh crap, I can't like step on these rocks. I don't know where my foot's going to land.
Right.
That's changed. I definitely trust the shoe way more than I used to. And some of that might even just be some experience with the company at this point. But what I will say is the shoe is very stable on foot. You have that firmer platform as far as the foam goes. You have a lot of sidewalls through the midfoot and rear foot coming right through there. The fit is more accommodating than it has been in the past. It's still a little bit narrow through the midfoot like most Hokas are, but way, way more forgiving. I mean, like, it did not irritate the medial longitudinal arch in any way. No blisters, nothing there. A lot of sole flaring going on in the forefoot specifically, which did give you a really stable platform to lever off from when you are rolling through that forefoot. The heel has it, but not quite as dramatic as, say, the forefoot. Right. So overall, I mean, it was a pretty balanced rocker throughout. You definitely do feel it. Like you feel like you're kind of rolling through. And I think some of that is the firmer foam. It doesn't decompress quite as much as, say, other foams do. So you feel the geometry of the platform a little bit more. Traction underfoot's also pretty good, I think. I mean, it's about as close to full contact as you can get without adding too much weight to an already big shoe. Right. So I think they did a pretty good job with it. I mean, I think the versatility of the shoe is pretty well. I mean, I've taken this in some trail, and it did fine. I didn't take it. This one was, I didn't really want to take it in anything too dramatic. So, I mean, more runnable trail, what we're talking. But it has some nice versatility to it, and it's kind of like that easy day shoe. I don't want to look at my watch. I'll check it later and just kind of click off the miles as you go. But for that purpose, it seemed to work pretty well. I think my security, as far as the upper and the platform goes, was pretty good. I was able to do everything I needed to do in it, and I didn't really feel like I was insecure in any way, and I didn't feel like I was on a top-heavy platform that I'm going to fall off of. I felt pretty grounded as well. So overall, I think they did a pretty good job as far as those go from my initial impressions.
And I would totally agree with you on all of those aspects where, you know, having not done a ton of mileage in a Bondi in a while, the upper was a little bit of a shock to me because I think there was so much shoe there. I was expecting a wider fit, but knowing deep down going the Bondi has always fit more narrow, and it's kind of more classic for Hoka fit. It was great in the heel and midfoot because it actually helps lock your foot in really well. The toe box was a little tough for me at first because I tend to be a little sensitive to that, so I was getting some like toe pain initially. But as the uppers broke in, that's been fine. It does have a little bit more snug fit throughout. So if you do need more room, they do have a large and extra large size, or wide and extra wide sizes if you do need that. That's very classic given how well this shoe sells, especially as a walking shoe. So just know if you need more room, that stuff is available. I totally agree that for the most part, even though I wasn't supposed to do a workout in like in this, and it was really low key. It wasn't like I was trying to hit a certain pace. But this is a recovery shoe. This is a daily training shoe. This is a long run shoe. This is a shoe that you go pound out miles in because you can do that, and it's got tons of foam underfoot. It's very stable, not a stability shoe way. Like you said, the sole flaring is done really well and not in a way that can get in the way, because that's definitely an issue. There are some shoes that flare out so much that you're going to get an early initial contact, and the taller the shoe is, the longer that lever arm is going to be and the more you're going to pivot. That was not a problem at all in this shoe. I have no idea how I'm landing just because proprioception is not going to be great in this. But because the sidewalls are done so well, your foot's really locked in on the platform. So I didn't have to worry, even while turning, about whether my foot was going to roll off. And same thing. I took it on a couple light trails, aggressive trails where it's really rocky. Go for their trail models. Don't do that. But it's been nice. It's been great. I really thought I was going to hate this because I generally don't like heavier, super max kind of shoes unless they're can move a little quicker. This actually did really well. And the rocker is nice. It's not getting in the way. But I would agree things just go a little slower most of the time. I would turn, don't worry about your watch. This is just for getting recovery miles in. So I am impressed. And I also the sole. I was expecting this to be a brick. But like you said, I think the fact that there's so much foam, even though it is firmer, the more this breaks in, the nicer it's been. So that's kind of been nice. And yeah, first Bondi I've gotten full mileage in a long, probably since the original, actually. I've tried all the other ones on, but we've never gotten them sent to us. And I remember back when I was working in running stores when this shoe was out in version 1 and 2, and it's really come a long way. That shoe, the first version was like, absolutely not. This is a clunker. It's heavy. Dropping it down to like 10.8 ounces for this is nuts.
Yeah,
I got to give him credit.
I feel like for the thick boy category, if you're under 11 ounces, that's pretty darn solid.
That's pretty solid, especially this is like the OG thick boy, too. So,
yeah,
that's impressive. But yeah, traction's doing good. What do you think about the new outsole pattern? You mentioned it a little bit earlier, but it's interesting to see how they're trying to save weight and start using some of these cutaways. It's still got a stiff ride. It's not flexible, but they can still get away with doing that. That's obviously going to help probably a major area. They got rid of some weight.
Yeah, I think it definitely brought some of the weight down. Anytime you take rubber off, it's one of the heaviest things that you could put on a shoe. So,
right.
Anytime you could take some of it off and get away with it, that's a good thing. I think they did a pretty good job having some flex grooves as well through the forefoot. They got two different areas there. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I mean, this is a pretty stiff shoe overall, but things change when you load them. When you're putting multiple times your body weight into the ground, these things will flex a little bit more. And I think that does smoothen out that forefoot rocker out a little bit as well. And I think they did a good job of making that still feel decently natural while still giving you a pretty sharp rockered ride.
Yeah.
So,
and it's especially important for those that walk versus run. So you might get I've noticed a different ride in this when you're doing those two things. And as you mentioned, it's because your body weight's going to be different. So body weight for walking is ×1 because that's the standard, right? It's just your body weight. But when you run, it's 4 to 5 times your body weight with every step. So that it's going to totally load the shoe differently. And I feel like you're totally right. Where walking, you're going to still maintain that stiffness. Running, you're probably going to bend it, which, smooths things out a little bit. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think one thing, too, I think they did a pretty good job with, just kind of like a last little note.
Yeah.
The tongue itself is also really padded, and it doesn't feel like it takes away from the upper of it. It gives it kind of a little bit of a plush-esque feel to it. But anytime you have a high-stack rockered shoe, sometimes I feel like that increases the risk for heel slippage. And so with this shoe, you can actually lock it down pretty well without having that heel rise, and it still feels pretty comfortable. It doesn't feel like you're biting down into the top of your foot. So I think they did a pretty good job, honestly. Yeah. I've been pretty happy with the Hoka Bondi 8.
So the big question is, we're going to have a full review, a written review later, so this is just kind of, let's touch on this stuff. Is there anything you would want changed? Anything you didn't like?
Anything I didn't like? I mean, I do think they did a pretty good job. It's kind of funny. I just said, I complimented the tongue there, but, I do think they could probably streamline the shoe a little bit more. They did a pretty good job of doing that. I mean, already taking some weight off. I mean, the upper material is pretty lightweight, but they probably could shave off a little bit more. I think the heel counter could also, they could maybe decrease a little bit of weight there, maybe have half the height perhaps, make it a little bit more flexible just to keep a little bit of structure but not have it be quite as rigid. Now it's padded really well, it doesn't get in the way, but that could also get a little bit of weight down. I think they did a pretty good job overall with the different cutouts and grooves that they did as far as the totality of the shoe goes. They have a little crash pad right here to kind of give in, but they probably could even take some of that foam out as well and give it a little bit more of a midline groove type presentation. They have a little bit of it, but they still have kind of that extended piece coming out of the rear foot. Yeah. Extended piece being this guy.
Oh, yeah.
Not the heel flare. The heel flare is there too, but I feel like that's almost negligible. I feel like because you're sitting right here.
Yeah,
Anyways,
I think that as
so
long as
it's
they
just
get
kind
that,
of a rounding of the shoe.
as long as you get that like end point to be directly under the foot, usually this isn't too much of a problem unless you're like a really heavy heel striker. But I feel like they integrated this a lot better than what was that? What was that other shoe? Why am I forgetting this? The
Clifton Edge 10-9.
Yeah. Sorry, Hoka. I hated that the Clifton Edge. That was so uncomfortable. But this is a lot better, where you can get rid of this stuff and you're actually going to land in transition. As long as that curve sits under the heel, you should be good. So I agree with you on that stuff. Honestly, I think they could move that curve a little bit. I think having the heel just a little bit more posterior lateral, given that's where most people are going to land, would probably be a little bit more helpful. I didn't have any issues just because the foam compresses so much. It's not really a problem. But I was excited when they talked about having a crash pad because I'm like, oh, David's going to be really happy to have a crash pad. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think that there are definitely some ways they can probably decrease weight in the upper, but it's going to be a challenge because at the end of the day, this is not a fast shoe. It's meant to be the more premium version. It's meant to be, yeah, I mean, they can do that. You can cut some more stuff out of the sole, but you also just got to be careful with that so things don't cave too much. So that's got to be a really tough balance. But I think, yeah, that actually might be an area they could get rid of some stuff and maybe potentially deepen those grooves, especially longitudinally, because then you can add some additional guidance in there for rolling you forward. So yeah, you're right.
For the listeners, I've just put up, I don't know, 5 different shoes just pointing out crash pads.
Yeah, gets excited. But I think, again, Hoka, you've done a really great job. This is, lightest Bondi ever. It's still very highly cushioned. I'm liking the foam changes. Would I like to see some newer foams? Potentially, yes. But that might mess with the fact that it's such a popular walking shoe. So good job updating this. I think people don't have to worry in terms of it's not going to be so drastically different that they're going to freak out because this is popular, right? People don't like it when you mess with things that they like. And I think they've done that just enough to improve it without changing the essence of what this shoe is. Any last thoughts on this?
No, I agree completely. I mean, you put it on your feet, it's still a Bondi. It feels like a Bondi. It's got all the Bondi DNA. Yeah. There's a couple of tweaks to it. I think that they are pretty decent sized tweaks, but at the end of the day, it still feels and rides like a Bondi.
Right. They didn't have to change the whole thing. They were able to upgrade it with some pretty good stuff.